You're listening to the WCEN podcast. Hello, everybody. I hope you're well. My name is Peaks, and you're listening to the WCEN podcast. The reason for this podcast show is to keep the communities and multi-faith networks informed on services, how to access them, and keep yourselves uplifted and keep your spirits high during this time. Everybody's on lockdown, so this platform is to share and express the needs of what's happening in the communities and different ways and things that people are doing for coping strategies. So we're going to be speaking to key members of these communities, whether it be faith leaders, members of the NHS, just people in key positions, even people who are just everyday people who may have a story to tell and share their experiences to help everybody feel uplifted and keep your spirits high. And on today's show, we are going to be joined by Bishop Delroy. So Bishop Delroy is the senior pastor of New Testament Assembly in Tooting, a fully devout Christ follower, leadership coach, community builder, family and systematic psychotherapist. He's also been with WCEN for a number of years doing co-production work. So, Bishop Delroy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Loud and clear.
Great. How are you doing today?
Today, I'm doing well. I'm grateful to God to have breath. Consider the times that we're in. I count myself as blessed.
Yes, definitely. And I'm sure, the fact that everybody is breathing and all right, then that's definitely a blessing. But
Yes.
you sound like, there's a lot going on, but hopefully we'll get into all of that. But if you could just give us a little brief introduction to everybody who's listening about who you are, where you're working, where you're based, and just up until before the lockdown, what it is that your work entails.
So I'm Bishop Delroy Powell, the national leader for the New Testament Assembly group of churches. I'm actually based at one of those churches in Tooting, here in Beechcroft Road. And the church that I am based at, which I operate as the lead or senior pastor, is perhaps known as the headquarters of a group of 14 churches across London and the Midlands. So this organization, it's been around since 1961, in fact. So it's a well-established institution in the borough. We began in Balham in 1961 and has moved around the borough until we settled here in Beechcroft Road. I came into ministry, as we call it, in my sort of late 20s. I started out as a minister within the church. I progressed through the ranks, as it were, and in 2013, after my father passed away, prior to that, I was inducted as the national presiding bishop or the national leader, succeeding my father, Bishop Melvin Lee Powell. To ask the question, how did I get into this? I would say it's really God. The last thing that I thought of doing as a young man growing up was to follow my father in ministry, as a clergy. When you're brought up around church leadership, some of it is wonderful, but you could also see the stresses and the challenges that come with it. And it's the last thing that I certainly wanted to do. My plans was to continue in the line of business that I was and to make my money and my success there. But God had a different plan for me, and I'll tell you quickly how it actually came about.
Yeah, that'd be good to hear.
In 1987, there was a terrible crash with the market. I was in the financial services industry at the time. And subsequent to that, I found myself a bit like where we are today, with lots of time on my hand, except we went on lockdown. And a friend of mine invited me to visit a young people's prison, Felton Young Offenders. He was doing a pre-release program, and he needed somebody to go in and help to promote the program amongst the prisoners. So I volunteered to do that. what I found was that I developed this rapport with the prisoners that even the governor of the prison noticed just how effective I was in communicating. And he actually invited me and gave me a contract to come into the prison to talk to the young men. What was I talking about? I was just talking about stuff around personal development and motivational stuff. But it was during that time that I really felt that call, as it were, that divine call, that God wanted me to work more with people like these than in the line of business that I was in. And so that was, if you like, the initiation of my call into ministry. Bit of a long story, but I think that was important to say because that marked a defining moment for me, Peaks. That was a defining moment in the direction that I then went into.
Yeah. I mean, it's always great. It wasn't that long of a story, so that was really good to kind of get that introduction, because it's always important to just kind of know people's history and what kind of got them into this line of work. Because faith work, you carry a lot on your shoulders and stuff, so it's good to know where that kind of passion comes from. And so, if you can tell us about that leap into becoming a bishop, I mean, what did that mean for you, and was that something that you were kind of aspiring for?
No, I certainly wasn't aspiring for it. If anyone knows me, I'm a behind the scenes person. I'm happy to be off the stage, out of the spotlight. Let me just qualify a little bit, say something about this title of bishopric. Within our tradition, this is the title that we give to the national overseer, as it used to be called, but for obvious reasons that name was dropped because it's going to take connections with history.
Yes.
So we give the title national presiding bishop to our national leader. It is recognized amongst our ecumenical partners, so the Church of England and the Free Churches, who we have a lot of engagement with, recognize the title of such. But it doesn't mean the same in terms of ranking as, for instance, within the Anglican Church, where, again, they use the same model of church leadership with the bishopric. What did it mean to me? I mean, it was a huge responsibility, the idea of being the person in charge of this amazing organization. This is an organization that began in 1960, and I think had done really well. It began as a small acorn that grew into an oak tree, went beyond the shores of Britain into other parts of the world as well. Now, my responsibility is mainly the UK, but it was still a huge responsibility to be the go-to person for, at the time, it was 17 pastors, 17 churches that we had. I didn't have a lot of training. I didn't get a lot of training in management, church management at this level. And so I hit the ground running, and I had to learn a lot of things very quickly on my feet. But here's something I learned. If you stay humble, you'll get by. People will help you. And so, I'd walked in humility and just didn't put any excess burden on myself. I did as much as I could do because I know that God doesn't expect you to do any more or any less than your capacity would allow you to. And I must say I've grown into the role, and as difficult as it might be sound, but I'm actually enjoying the role of serving in this capacity. And I say serving because that's what it is. It's not so much leading like top down. This is serving people, serving leaders, and serving the people that I lead and that they lead.
Yeah, so wow. So, I mean, talking about serving now, and obviously with the history you've just given us now, this is the UK on lockdown. The whole world is pretty much in the same kind of situation. And we're now with an extended 3 weeks. So can you tell us about, obviously the church doors have always been open, especially within the Black community. It's such an important, lifeline to so many people. That's where they have their security. That's where they have that safety net, and they build up their faith also. But now that, in the wake of this pandemic, the churches have had to close. So can you tell us, when this lockdown happened, how prepared were you for it? And how did you guys continue on with that? What is it that you guys are continuing on with now?
Well, the thing about the coronavirus pandemic, it it was sudden and unexpected. It took us. We didn't see it coming, and we didn't have a very busy online presence prior to that. But we had to learn, and we had to learn real fast. And I thank God we have some real smart, gifted people, young people around us who understand the technology. Some of them work in the field of social media and filming and so on. So they quickly came together as a group, and within the first week, we were able to uplift our weekly Sunday service, which is our optimum time where people gather. We lift that onto a YouTube platform and a Facebook platform. We open up various Zoom and WebEx accounts, so we were able to connect our various groups. It's quite a busy church with lots of different departments, lots of different groups and auxiliaries. And so we're able to get onto Microsoft Teams and Zoom and actually connect all these groups together by way of kind of keeping everybody in the loop of what was going on. It wasn't easy. It was challenging. And we're still learning, a lot of how to do this more effectively. But I think we have successfully managed to network, I'd say at least 85-90% of our people.
So, I mean, in terms of what you're offering now to the community, you mentioned that are you doing like live streams and things, or what's still available for those, because your church is massive and stuff. So basically, there's a lot of people out there. So if they haven't got the message or whatever it is, what is it that you still have on offer at the moment for them? And if there's any links or anything that you can mention, that would be great.
Yeah, if you go to the church's website, www.ntatooting.org, you can pick up the link there into our, they're pre-recorded. We, as a church, we see ourselves as good citizens, Peaks, and when the government guidelines came out within our risk assessment or management documents, we made it quite clear to all our people that we were going to be in solidarity with the government guidelines, with the Mayor of London's guidelines. And so we weren't going to come into the building. So everything that we do online is actually done from our homes. Mm-hmm. Occasionally we came into the building because the rules allowed the minister to come in and do the odd take from the building, but it's largely done from the comfort of our homes. And so you can go to the website, you pick up there our weekly Sunday service, which is broadcast at the same time, or 11:30 each week, which is the time that we usually meet for one of our services. You can also find backdated programs from the previous week since the lockdown. Some of the other stuff that we do are closed groups, so our Zoom meetings are closed to members because of the security problems with one of those platforms. But the public can go to the website, as I said, and not just view, but actually engage and participate in the chat while the service is being broadcast. The services are designed primarily really to uplift people. So we have our music team who provides some songs, and of course we pray, and one of us try to give a motivational or uplifting word of hope. We see it as important that we carry that narrative as a Christian organization. That is one of our core message. The Christian message is one of hope, even in the darkest of times as this is.
I mean, in terms of services, that's really great that you're still offering that so that people can still kind of worship along with you in the comfort of their homes, as you say. But in terms of, the difference between being in the church and then putting together something for like a live stream in the comfort of your home, has there been any challenges with that for you? I mean, how does that kind of translate for you instead of standing in front of people or just being in front of you in a camera and trying to give that sermon?
Personally, I find it really challenging. I am very uncomfortable in that space. Yeah. It's not me, and I even post the lockdown, people saying, well, we need to keep this going. I'm not so sure if that's going to be my particular preferred way of communicating. There are other ministers within the church who I think are super gifted at that, and particularly younger ones. And I'm very happy to put them forward as the media face, if you like. But I personally find it very, very difficult speaking into a camera. My style of preaching actually is more kind of engaging and the call and response. So I like to have people in front of me so I can read the room and see how they're reacting, and I could change my tone or even the direction that I'm going in based on what I'm kind of seeing in engagement. When you're speaking into a microphone or a camera, you know, it's so difficult. You just don't know. It's just you and the camera, and there's no audience to feed back on. So I've personally found it quite challenging.
I mean, yeah, of course, that whole thing with the social distancing and all that kind of stuff. So, yes, so that's going to be something that maybe, actually, you just take it for granted that leaders can just adapt to everything. So it's really nice that you shared that story. But yeah, I'm sure you're doing a great job, and I'm sure the feedback has been good. So I'm glad that you're still continuing on with it, because obviously it's important for everyone to see you out there as well. But in terms of your work with WCEN, you guys have been in such a long-term partnership and done some really amazing work with co-production. So if you can tell us a bit about your how you come to work with WCEN and that co-production work that you were doing as well previous to the lockdown, because I'm sure it's translated into what you guys are doing now, and how well prepared you guys have been. So if you can give us a bit of insight into your history together.
You know, we are proud as an organization, New Testament Assembly. We are proud to be to have WCEN as strategic partners, particularly in community engagement. Our mission statement has always been one. In fact, the DNA of our church, the very DNA of our church, going back to 1961, we began as a church that was about worship. It was about vibrancy and worship and getting people ready for heaven. But we were always quite socially concerned and responsible. And so when I met with Malik over 12 years ago now, we immediately resonated in terms of our interest in engaging with the various needs across our community. What WCN has done for us is helped us to help us really to put into practice, or to bring into reality many ideas that we had prayed and talked about. We didn't have that way, that access into the community. WCN has opened doors for us within the policymakers and the decision makers across Wandsworth. And so we're now a recognized organization within the corridors of Wandsworth Borough Council. And that really is due to our relationships with the Wandsworth Community Empowerment Network. We're very kindred, or if you like-minded in terms of our shared vision to see the least reached, the seldom reached, the often overlooked parts of our community where there's disparity within health, in particular mental health, to address those disparities. And like I said, WCN has been really, really important for us in getting our message out there and bringing us to the table so that our concerns could be heard amongst the powerful actors in the council.
So, some of the work that you've done, you've got the Pastors Network, you've hosted HOBV, which is Heal Our Broken Village, for like 12 years now. So what kind of goes into that? And what's the kind of response from your from the communities who come to that? What is it they kind of really can get out of that when they attend?
There's a different pieces of work we've done. The Healing Our Broken Village Conference, which is now an established annual mental health and Black church conference, has done so much to help to raise awareness. I know it's worked both ways. The clinicians and professional people that's come, they've got their testimony of how helpful it's been. But from our community perspective, it's gone a long way to help to raise awareness, particularly of the plight of black men in mental health. More recently, we've been more focused on young people and young people's mental health through our Black Minds Matter program. But it has measurably lifted our awareness. It's helped to remove stigmas and suspicions that exist even within our community towards the institutions that are working in the field of mental health. I can say that our church is a lot more aware of mental health as a result of these programs, so much that if you look across our congregation, and I know we shouldn't sort of judge people by their behavior, but often you can tell somebody who might be affected by mental health. The interesting thing is that they come and they sit and they participate and they are received and embraced as a part of the church congregation. And again, that's a credit to the work of WCN and ourselves through the Healing Our Broken Village, the Hope Atrium, which is another organization that we work closely with in bringing mental health awareness to our people.
Yes. And in terms of, obviously, again, we're in this extended 3 weeks lockdown now. And, you know, something that's kind of come to the forefront is, as you just said, mental health. You know, people may not be dealing with it because they're, you know, confined. They can't really go out. They can't really have that community that they, that kind of like togetherness and stuff. They may be stressed about finances and things. But in terms of that, I mean, how are you able to still communicate with the community and outreach to them to find out, is there any particular needs that you've found that's really arisen from everyone?
Yeah, just if I could just start a little bit more of a broader, on a broader note. Our church is comprised of roughly around 120, 130 over 70-year-olds, members and visitors who come. And that's quite a large group of people. And one of the things that we did at the onset of the lockdown was that we broke them up into groups. So we have 20 or so ministers, and each minister has a group of these seniors who they are responsible for connecting with once a week. They have set questions that they ask them. They ask them about their well-being, about their resources, their food supply, and so on and so forth, and also about their mental well-being. As you can imagine, this is a worrying time for people who are the older section of our community. They're fearful about their health. They're fearful about going to the hospitals. Some of the common issues that we're dealing with are older people with underlying issues, not to do with coronavirus, who are fearful of going into hospital or going to the GPs. Well, they can't go to GPs anyway, but going to the hospital because they're fearful that those hotspots might actually lead to worse kind of scenarios, them getting maybe admitted or picking up the virus there. And so we've had to be counseling them through that. We have a group of trained counselors in our church. Some, as you know, were trained through the systemic program. But beyond that, we have a strong body of trained counselors who we refer people who we're concerned about, like these older people, and younger people too. Younger people who are affected can access us through the church's admin, and then we refer them on to one of our counselors. Our counselors are very busy, as you can imagine, at this time. One of the things, Pete, that we talk about pre-existing medical condition, and people with those conditions are self-isolating. There are also pre-existing mental health conditions that we don't say enough about, which is also affected by the virus. In fact, there are other pre-existing conditions, social conditions, that the virus really has compounded those problems. I think of relationships that were already under strain, and the increase in domestic violence, for instance. These were pre-existing conditions that the virus has really just added, if you like, or compounded the problems even further. And so we're working with all kinds of issues that's coming out: social issues, domestic violence issues, people who have difficulty being isolated. Because they have various phobias and so on. So our counseling team, our pastoral counseling team, are extremely busy just reaching out to our seniors and to other members of our church and community who are affected in a variety of different ways as a result of the coronavirus pandemic.
I mean, obviously, a lot must be highlighted for you guys, for also for the government services and all that kind of stuff. Is there a way that you're working in partnership with each other, or do you feel that you need more support, or do you feel like all the work that you've done pre to this happening, you are actually quite prepared for what's going on now?
No, I don't think any of us can operate solo on this. This has to be, from an international perspective, it has to be seen as a global coming together of governments and nations. So equally so at the local level, communities must come together to address the issue of food supply to people who maybe in need of food. Or other issues that may come up. So we're always seeking to collaborate we're collaborating, for instance, on our food program with a couple of organizations, and indeed through WCN, we recently made an application for funding to help with some of our programs, including a mobile food bank that we're about to launch in a week or so's time. So yes, collaboration is really crucial, I think, at this time. Nobody should be trying to solo go on their own. We're all in this together, and I think our united efforts will yield a lot more than our individual attempts.
Yes, I mean, and in the wake of everything that's happened, how do you see, obviously there's going to be a time when this is over with, all the things that you've learned now, what do you think maybe is one of the biggest lessons that you've kind of learned through all of this, and in preparation for, when all these bans are kind of lifted and you're allowed to open your church buildings up again, what do you think that, that you've kind of learned from this and how you'll integrate everyone back in?
It's this, obviously, it's been devastating just daily hearing the death toll of our loved ones or loved ones of our family, our church family members and community family members whose lives were ended prematurely, I would say, due to this dreadful disease. I think as we speak, we're looking at 18,000 people in this country alone. And so our hearts and our prayers go out to those individuals and families who are grieving the loss of their loved ones without the opportunity to bring closure, as you know, because they can't have proper funerals and to process their grief properly. But there's some good things that's come out of it. I mean, as sad as that is, there's some good things that's come out of it. I think our community online has grown closer together. I think, as they say, absence makes the heart grow fonder. What I find is that people are connecting a lot more than they would otherwise with each other. And I think we're going to build on that post lockdown. We'll be building on that. I think people have developed, this has really kind of been a shake-up for people. People's values have changed. People, I think, hopefully will be a lot less selfish and more selfless through this. COVID-19 has brought us back and realigned us to some of our core values, around community and serving and sharing and not just looking out for ourselves, but looking out for one another. And that's got to be a good thing. So it's not all been all been bad.
Yes, of course. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things that everybody's said about this is just how much everybody's kind of bonding more with each other, which is kind of, great that, that kind of aspect has kind of come back to the forefront now and asking how people are and all that kind of stuff and really being interested. But in terms of, when this again, what would you like to see like implemented now that this kind of we've gone through all this kind of thing? What would you like to see kind of like, I would like to see this kind of change for the better now?
Wow, that's a big question. What would I like to see at government level, at local level?
Any level. I mean, you can do both.
Government level, government has learned to behave more civil towards each other. I've noticed that. I'd like to see that continue. We can disagree, we can have our differences as we do, but, there's a civil and decent way to go about it. So I think decency seems to have returned, and I'd like to see us build on that concept of decency and the civil way in which we engage with each other. At a local level, I think I like to see us continue to build across our differences in terms of faith, culture, our differences. What we saw was people, Muslims and Christians and Hindus and people of other faiths, people of other cultures, privileging their common plight, as it were, under this crisis, over these dividing things that have been there. So I like to see us. Obviously, we'll continue as we are. We're not all going to become one big, wonderful melting pot. But I like to see that healthy respect that we've developed for each other, regardless of our social differences or cultural differences, continue.
And with all your faith, with your faith work, with the fact that you work with multi-faith organizations, also with WCEN and with the mosques and all the other faith networks, members of the community, members of health services, in your work in prisons, everything that you've kind of learned, what would kind of your message now be to just sum everything up that you can leave on a closing note?
Well, my message, my final point is I've learned something very interesting in this whole thing, that social distancing doesn't equate to social separation or social silence. I made the point the other day in one of my sermons that it's not the distance that separates us, but the silence. The world is going to change, and this thing of distancing is going to become a real issue. But just because we're physically distancing from each other, it doesn't stop us from connecting with each other socially, and certainly in terms of communication. As I said, it's the silence that often separates, and not the physical distance. And so my message to us would be, let's stay connected to each other. And we'll respect the rules because it's important that we do, but don't use that as an excuse for not connecting. We have the technology, and there are ways that we can actually still continue to connect to each other and together synergistically achieve so much more for our community and for ourselves.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and may you continue on with all the work that you guys are doing, and we will keep updated with everything and leave all your links down below. So thank you for the work that you guys are continuing to do.
Thank you, Peaks and WCN, for the opportunity to share in this podcast. Stay safe, stay well, and stay informed.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. So thank you so much. That was Bishop Delroy of Tooting New Testament Assembly. We will leave all of the links down below if you wanted to get in contact with them. Also, if you want to find out more, then please, you can leave your feedback, tips or experiences, leave a comment down below, or you can email us on info@wcen.org.uk. You can also visit the website and find out about the latest podcasts, news, and sign up to newsletters. You can check us out on www.wcen.co.uk. If you want to find out the latest government healthcare guidelines and what's happening as things progress, please go to www.gov.uk or visit www.wandsworth.gov.uk. If you found this helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. Stay safe, stay well, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you. You're listening to the WCEN podcast.